Right, we're going to get started. So hello everyone, my name is Ellie and I'll be your host for this evening. We're super excited to have you all here tonight, and we've also got JLR with us, so that's super exciting. They're here to talk to you all about apprenticeships, the different apprenticeship schemes they offer, and a little bit about their application processes too. So you'll be hearing from Chantel, who is from the early careers team at JLR, and also a few apprentices, Marley, Felix and Daisy. So just before I pass over to Chantel, there's just a couple of things from me. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, then please just pop them straight in the chat box, and we'll try and answer them throughout the webinar, but also during our live Q&A session at the end of the webinar. This webinar will also be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel tomorrow, so if you do miss anything, you can always check it out afterwards. But that's everything from me. So Chantel, I'll pass over to you.
Fabulous, thanks Ellie. So thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. Looks like we've got a lot of people, which is fantastic. As Ellie mentioned, my name is Chantel and I work as the apprentice recruitment lead at JLR. So in terms of today, we've just got a couple of slides that we're going to walk you through, and then we'll have time at the end to answer any questions as well. But just in terms of, hopefully you will have a bit of an understanding about JLR and who we are as an organisation. But just in terms of, for those that aren't as familiar, JLR was previously known as Jaguar Land Rover. But essentially JLR is evolving the world of modern automotive luxury. So we're known for creating era-defining vehicles. So at JLR, we have around 42,000 people across the world, which is amazing. We are predominantly based in the West Midlands within the UK, but we do have facilities in global locations such as China, for example, Slovakia, India, Brazil, the USA. So when you do work at JLR, there may be opportunities where you are connecting and working with people globally, which is amazing. But essentially JLR is a house of brands. So we have our Range Rover, Defender, Discovery and Jaguar that are at the forefront of our organisation. And we've just went through that organisational change to really focus on those vehicles and product lines. And each of those vehicles will have a unique selling point for those customers in particular. So when a customer goes to a retailer, they're often looking for a Range Rover, for example, or Discovery. They're not really looking for Jaguar Land Rover, which is why now those vehicles are going to be able to have their own unique personalities that are going to be a really cool selling point for our vehicles in particular. But another exciting point of our journey, which is part of our Reimagine strategy, which is a great avenue to start looking through if you are considering making an application with us. But in terms of, we are going to try and play a video now, so I'm going to give this a go and hopefully this will play with sound.
I'm going to qualify. I'll be a qualified technician. I'll be qualified in what I always wanted to do.
I mean, there's so much further for me to grow, but I've seen a massive change in like the way I am, the things I've learned.
I've been inspired by some great people. You know, there's some really inspirational people in JLR.
If you want to push yourself, there's nobody stopping you. They are there to facilitate that development.
The most inspiring characteristic about someone is when they are themselves. I have a world of possibilities here. That's the good thing about JLR, and that's what I'm excited about.
So just wanted to play that video, which is part of our recruitment campaign. But I think the real takeaway and the message that we want to explore and showcase is that arrive as you are, achieve the exceptional. When you do join JLR, we want you to be your authentic self. We don't want you to put a mask on. We want you to know that you can be yourself truly here at JLR. And really, there is an opportunity, I think, to go and achieve the exceptional. All of those people that we do use within those videos and materials, they are all our real people on programme. They are all their real experiences at JLR. So I think when you get to hear from some of our apprentices later on today, hopefully you'll learn more around the culture and environment that we are creating. But it is definitely a good stepping stone and starting point for your career in particular. But just to move on in terms of, so where are some of the locations where our apprentices could be based in particular? So for us, most of our apprenticeships are based within the West Midlands in particular. So in areas such as our Whitley sites, Gaydon, some of our manufacturing plants such as Solihull, for example, Castle Bromwich, Halewood, then based in Liverpool, is another site that we're recruiting to. So mainly within the West Midlands, with a small proportion of roles going into the Liverpool region too. But in terms of what we wanted to talk to you about today is about the apprenticeships that we do have on offer at JLR. So we offer a range of apprenticeships ranging from level 3 apprenticeships up to level 7 apprenticeships. So what we'll do as part of this presentation and webinar, we will talk to you a bit more about all of those programs and what they do involve, and there'll be lots more information that you can go and explore on the website too. But I think in terms of the real benefits of being able to pursue an apprenticeship in particular is that you get that real hands-on experience. You get to learn from technical experts at JLR that are there to support you, grow you and enhance your skills. All of our apprenticeships at JLR are 4 years, so it is a longevity in terms of the commitment perspective, but the rewards and benefits that you do take away are fantastic, and that skills and knowledge and experience that you gain is really fundamental. We have a range in terms of rewards, so dependent on the programme that you join us on will depend on the salary, and each year that salary does increase year by year as part of your programme. And we have some other benefits that we'll talk about later on in the webinar as well. But in terms of the community feeling is a good point to touch upon. When you do join JLR, you're not on your own when you join us. We have over 1,000 people or so that are on our early careers programme, so it's as a graduate, undergraduate or as an apprentice. So there's lots of other individuals that are in similar circumstances starting a new role with an organisation, so plenty of people to connect with, which is really important when undertaking an apprenticeship. But now what we're going to do is talk a little bit more around the apprenticeships that we do have on offer before I do hand over to the apprentices to talk about their experiences. So at JLR, starting from our earlier apprenticeships, so we have the level 3 advanced apprenticeship. So this is the only programme that you would be able to apply to with just your GCSEs. There are certain requirements that you do need to meet that we'll touch upon later on in the slide pack, but this is the only one for those who want to pursue an apprenticeship straight after school, so when you're 16. So how this programme works is, for most of your first year, you'll actually spend your time at your training provider where you're learning the engineering basics that you'll require for your role and learning how to work safely within the environment that you'll go into. So for this role in particular, you really need to understand for that first year, how am I actually going to get to the training provider? And the training providers for this apprenticeship are based in Leamington Spa with Warwickshire Manufacturing Group, or we have Make UK, which is based in Aston. Some of that first year will be spent on plant as well, so you might have to go to Solihull or Castle Bromwich, but that first year predominantly you really need to think about how can I get to that training provider every day. And then as you go further onto your programme, so 2, 3 and beyond, that's where you then have day release at your training provider, and you'll then spend most of your time in plant. This role, I would say, is really hands-on and practical, so lots of this work is where you do actually have to be in the facility day to day, because the work is practical, hands-on, and you might need to work with cars, machinery, etc. That's really important. And then as part of an apprenticeship, all apprentices do something called the endpoint assessment, which is essentially assessing the knowledge, skills and behaviours that you've achieved as part of your apprenticeship. So each apprenticeship, regardless of the apprenticeship you go on, you'll have to be able to demonstrate that. But in terms of this apprenticeship in particular, we do have a number of pathways that we have. So we have the automotive, manufacturing or property, and the starting salary for this role is 15,800. So in terms of the pathways, there's some information here, and I won't talk about everything on the screen also here to make sure that we maximise the opportunity to ask questions at the end. But the automotive pathway is where you'll end up in our engineering operations or our classic operations team. So this is for those individuals that want to work hands-on with cars. So for this role in particular, you might be restoring cars, you might be preparing cars for external events, servicing and maintenance, for example, but this is where you'll actually touch the vehicle. We then have the manufacturing pathway. So the manufacturing pathway is really focused on working within a plant facility, so such as our Solihull facility. This is not actually working directly with the cars, but more about the machinery that we have producing the cars, that we need to make sure don't have any breakdowns or cause us not to be able to produce vehicles. So as part of this work, you'll be doing preventative or reactive maintenance to make sure that we are continuing to build as many cars as possible, as that's really important for our business. As a stoppage to our line can be really costly to our organisation. And then we then have the property role, which is how do you maintain buildings, so things such as the lighting, the plumbing, for example, the kitchens that we have. So really focused on ensuring that the buildings and the facilities are maintained. But all of these roles here are very practical and very hands-on, and that's really important because, you know, if you're interested in that, you enjoy things like that at school, college potentially, that's something that you can really continue with on this apprenticeship programme. We then have the level 4 apprenticeship programme. So again, this is one of the apprenticeship programmes where you do spend a number of months. So from September to December is where you're full-time at your training provider. So this is Warwickshire Manufacturing Group, where you need to be able to get to Leamington Spa for those every day for those first couple of months before you then go into day release for the remainder of your apprenticeship programme, where you'll do one day at the training provider and the rest of the time is where you'll be based at plant or so. But for this role in particular, this role only recruits into engineering, and the starting salary is $20,300 as part of that programme. So in terms of, you'll join one of our engineering operations teams, so you might working in our engineering operations or engineering vehicle teams. So you might join teams such as our battery testing teams, our climatic testing teams, or even our lab testing teams. But in terms of, as you can imagine from that role, a lot of the role is about testing, for example. So you might be installing vehicles into testing facilities, you might be utilising automated test equipment, but this is really focused on problem solving, for example. But again, this is a really hands-on practical role where you do need to be in the office, in the facility, to be able to put the vehicles and conduct that testing, which is really essential, as we need to make sure that our vehicles you can sell for in excess of £100,000. So we need to make sure those vehicles are at the best quality for those customers that are purchasing. So a lot of testing to make sure that it does meet customer expectations. At JLR, we also then have a number of degree apprenticeships that we offer. So we have our Digital and Technology Solutions programme, our Applied Professional Engineering Degree Apprenticeship programme, our Supply Chain Logistics and Supply Chain and Procurement programme. The starting salary for these programmes are just over $24,000. And in terms of how this programme works, they will either be based at the University of Warwick or Aston University. But essentially, this is a block release week programme. So 1 in 6 weeks is where you're typically based at the university, and what it suggests there, so in year 3 and 4 is where you'll then specialise in particular modules. So the Digital and Technology Solutions and the Applied Professional Engineering Degree Apprenticeship programme have pathways where you'll then specialise, and again you'll do your endpoint assessment. So the Applied Professional Engineering Degree Apprenticeship programme has 4 different pathways that you can apply to. You can only apply to 1 pathway per year. So I think that's really important, that you do need to go away, read the information on the website to find what is the pathway that interests you. But we have the Product Design and Development pathway. So for example, this might be building components that will go into the vehicle. You'll be utilising software potentially such as CAD and visualisation software. One of the really important things is that you don't have to be an expert in any of these tools or equipment or software. This is one of the things at JLR that we then support you in terms of from that perspective. We then have control systems. So this is in terms of similar to the level 3 apprenticeship, but in terms of if there is any breakdowns with any of our machines, equipment that are very technical, or in terms of with our programmable logic controller software, this is where the control systems team will get involved to make sure that breakdowns and any issues are kept to a minimum. So this is where those breakdowns in the plant facilities are a bit more technical, and this is where we need the team to really understand and utilise problem solving skills. We then have manufacturing. So for us as an organisation, we really need to focus on the quality that goes into manufacturing. So for example, product design and development are creating some of the components that will go into the vehicle. Manufacturing is focused on, does that actually work in practice? Are we able to build that and put that into a vehicle, but really focused on quality and maintaining that quality that customers receive at the end line once they've received their product. And then we then have electrical and electronics. So for us, cars are becoming more and more technology focused. For us, there's probably a rare part in the vehicle that you wouldn't find has some form of electrical circuit or connection. So this is really focused on embedding some critical systems. So it might be embedding the safety critical system design, might involve programming, for example, might involve working with inverters, chargers, but I think in terms of a really important role in terms of that electrical piece within the vehicle is becoming more and more complex. We then have the level 6 digital and technology solutions degree apprenticeship programme. So again, this one does have a number of pathways that we offer. So for this year, we've been offering the software engineering with data, and the data analytics pathway. So this programme in particular is for those that are really interested in programming, coding, for example. The software engineering with data programme is in terms of where it's more complex, it's a lot more numerical and mathematical. So that's for those that do have a real interest in terms of that complexity. And the data analytics for us is really important for us as a business, how we make decisions as we move forward and make those decisions that enable us to be profitable. For example, we need to make sure we have people visualizing, modeling data, correlating and validating data to make sure that we can make those decisions. But in terms of with the software engineering with data, vehicles are becoming more and more technology savvy. There's a lot of programming and coding that goes into the vehicle, lots of different software that might require new updates to software, each week or so. So it's really important that we have individuals that are working continuously to make sure that the technology is as up to date as your mobile phone, for example. We then have the level 6 supply chain programme. So we either have in logistics, which is focused on how do we make sure that we get all of the parts to the plant at the right time. So at JLR, if we are missing one part of the vehicle, for example, that might actually mean we aren't able to produce the car. So it's really important that we get all of those small parts and materials that go into the vehicle at the time. So it's a really complex organisation skill, a lot of project management to make sure that we coordinate all of the millions of parts arriving on time. And then we then have procurement. So procurement is focused on, we have the logistics side bringing the parts to the plant, but the procurement side is how do we actually purchase and buy the materials that go into the vehicle, really focused on that quality element, but also focused on the cost part. So making sure that all of the parts that we do buy do enable us to make a profit, as that is really important to our organisation, but maintaining quality is really essential so that those customers receive modern luxury when buying one of our vehicles. And then we then have the level 7 finance apprenticeship programme. So a level 7 programme, you don't get a degree out of this programme in particular like the level 6 programmes, but you do get a SEMA qualification, which is a core qualification for those undertaking a role within finance. But this in terms of is a great programme where it's a rotational programme, so across the 4 years or so, each year typically the apprentices rotate into a number of different roles also across that period of time to really give them the breadth and depth of understanding of finance. But in terms of that SEMA qualification, some of that is looking at the basics of accountancy to begin with, so things like bookkeeping, so that you can develop those skills also ready for your end of your programme, where many apprentices will go into roles such as business partnering. But in terms of the entry requirements for the programme, they do vary. So I think I touched upon at the start, the level 3 advanced apprenticeship programme is the only programme you can join after completing your GCSEs, and each of the other programmes then will require you to either have studied an A level or gone beyond year 11 studies. All of this information is on the website, so I won't talk about it all in detail so that we can get to the apprentice slides, which I think are really important. But one to be aware of is the level 4 apprenticeship programme. You do need your GCSEs, but for this year we have opened up the entry criteria. So you can either have a Maths A level at grade C, you can be taking a BTEC in one of the listed BTEC subjects below, so such as engineering, electrical and electronic engineering and mechanical engineering, and you'll need to have got triple distinction. and you'll need to have got distinction within Unit 1. Or we also are accepting T levels for this particular programme, so either in design and development for engineering and manufacturing, or one of the other two listed on the screen as well. They'll need to have got an overall distinction grade and a grade A in the core component. But a great addition for this year is that we've opened up that entry criteria. And then we then have our level 6 and level 7 programmes. Again, these programmes in particular will need a slightly higher requirement for your GCSEs, and they will need some A levels. So that might be, for example, physics, chemistry, engineering, but many of these programmes will require a maths A level. So the level 6 applied professional engineering, the digital and technology solutions programmes also, they will require a maths A level, which I think is really important. But you can refer to all of this on the website also. But I think the main point here is we don't move away from the entry criteria. You do have to meet the minimum to be able to come into the programme. So worth really checking that when you do make an application. But in terms of, there's a number of different benefits at JLR, so the mentoring, the coaching that you receive, the wider community that you can get involved in. I'm sure the apprentices will touch upon that point, but there's a lot of focus on wellbeing and personal support, because we know this is quite a big journey, going from school or college, for example, or if you've moved location, so we're there to support you. Some apprenticeship programmes will enable you to work more flexibly from home, but others you will be, the level 3 and level 4 are more practical and hands-on, where you will need to be in the office. One thing with an apprenticeship, you don't get all of the 6 weeks holidays, so just want to be aware of, you do lose those unfortunately, but you still do have a good amount of holiday to be able to relax and take time away from the workplace. JLR, we are focused on diversity and inclusion, so there are a number of employee networks that you can join alongside those early careers communities, so a great way to build your networks. You don't get a free car unfortunately, but you do get discounts on products also. You get some high street savings, so maybe you want to go to cinema, go on holiday, you can purchase discounted items, and you do have a pension scheme as well, which is important to think about for the future. But the main thing is that hands-on real practical experience that you're going to gain, which I'm sure our apprentices will touch upon. But in terms of to make sure that we do maximise the time, I am going to hand over to our apprentices now. So I'm going to hand over to Marley firstly, who's going to talk about her experience at JLR. So over to you, Marley.
Thanks, Chantal. I hope everyone can hear me. If not, please let me know. But yeah, my name's Marley. I'm a current level 3 advanced apprentice. I'm in my final year, so I started in 2020. I started just as COVID sort of kicked in really, which was an experience in itself. But I've been very lucky to have worked for 4 years in design. Unfortunately, my course doesn't really exist anymore, as Chantal kind of touched on. There's been things that have changed over the past 4 years, but my course is still very similar to what we offer within the automotive industry really. But yeah, working in design has been amazing for me. I felt an apprenticeship was right for me as soon as I left school. I knew that university wasn't for me. I did do A levels, so I had the options, but unfortunately I didn't do maths, which is really important if you are looking to do anything above a level 3. Your maths in, well, A-level maths is critical. So unfortunately I didn't have that. So I looked at the level 3 and found that the options were, you know, ticked every box for me. So working for the company has been amazing. I've worked on cars and projects that I never could have really dreamed of. I've worked on Range Rover, the launch of the Range Rover SV. I've worked on Defender, and I'm now working on the Jaguar models, which I can't tell you anything about, but it's very exciting for the future, that's for sure. So, but along the way, there have definitely been challenges. I've worked with so many different people, and there's a lot of ideas coming together, working with all these different people. So being able to work in different groups has definitely been a challenge, coming from school where I've, you know, been with the same people for 7 years. So introducing myself and working with new teams has definitely been a challenge, but it's also taught me a lot of skills. And finding those solutions to challenges when they do come up, because trust me, they do, has been a really invaluable skill. So working on all these different projects, I now have the confidence to sort of hold my own in meetings and team situations. So it's been really, really rewarding. Activities is a hard one, and because my day-to-day varies so much, and I'm sure the other two guys on this call will tell you the same. But just being able to go to work and not know what to expect is really exciting for me. I don't like doing the same thing day in and day out. And if that's how you also feel, then this is probably the place for you. But there's so many benefits, there's so many exciting projects coming up. It's such a great time to join the business. So if anyone's got any questions about level 3 or level 4s, because my course hits probably a bit of both of them now, please put them in the chat and hopefully I can answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Marley. So I think we're going to hand over to Felix now. So over to you, Felix.
Yeah, hello, my name's Felix. I am a level 6 APEP, which is the short for very long Applied Professional Engineering Programme degree apprentice. That's a level 6. So I came into this just having done my A-levels. I'm in my first year, so that was just last year. So if you've got any questions about applications, entry requirements, interview processes, that's all still fresh in my mind. So feel free to give me a shout. So personally, I work in chassis engineering. The way I saw it when I was applying for or looking around my sort of post-18 options, I knew I wanted to work with all cars. When I was younger, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but just cars. And then as I sort of progressed through A-levels, I thought I really want to focus on engineering. And when I was looking at my options, it was university doing automotive engineering. And I can't actually remember how it came into my head, but apprenticeships sort of came up in my mind, and I started looking into them. And when you sort of look at the pros and the cons, you don't have to pay for your tuition fees, you get paid, you get work experience. It all just seemed to be sort of, all positives and no negatives as far as I can see. So I work in chassis engineering, so with suspension. So I've only been here 6 months now, but I've been working on suspension for Range Rover products, for new products that I also can't tell you about. And it's just a really exciting place to work, for the fact that I've come out of school about, well, nearly a year ago now, and I'm already making an impact on cars that otherwise I just read about or hear on the news, like there's a new car out. It's amazing to think that I'm 18 and I'm already making an impact. So that's, I think, the really fantastic thing about getting involved in apprenticeships, especially getting involved sort of so early on in your career or your education, becoming a part of your own career at that point is a fantastic opportunity. So I really recommend it.
Fabulous. Thanks, Felix. And I don't know if you want to touch upon anything around what you've enjoyed the most and what you found the most challenging.
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest thing as well, I think personally, when I had sort of my slightest reservation was sort of, would I miss out on that sort of university life, or would I sort of not be around people in my experience? And I think Chantal, you mentioned earlier the early careers community. That's been a fantastic part, and I think that's sort of possibly my favorite part of working at JLR as an entity, because I know apprentices in other companies, I know they don't have the same support network of other graduates, other apprentices in their age set. And so that's something I've become super involved in. I'm helping plan excursions and events, taking part in excursions events. There's something for everybody. I'm part of the badminton club, there's karting, and just that whole sort of experience really it's just something that I don't think you get in other places as well, and it adds to your social life so massively, especially because I've moved to be here. I know that some people might be local to the area, some people might be moving from hours and hours away, and the JLR facilitates you to be able to make new friends, and they really make that the forefront of their of your sort of experience when you onboard at JLR. So that's another part of JLR that's my favorite, I suppose.
Thank you, Felix. And I think that's just a good point just to touch upon, is that relationships that you are building also. So thank you for that. And please do think, as both Felix and Marley have said, please do put up any questions also in the chat. We're going to hear from Daisy next, and then just a couple of slides extra, and then we'll be into the full Q&A. So I'm going to hand over now to yourself, Daisy.
Thanks, Chantal. So hello everyone, my name is Daisy and I am a level 7 finance apprentice. So I'm in my second year of the programme at the minute. So I'm in my second role. Each year out of the 4 years, you do roll into a different role, which gives you a very broad understanding of all the different sort of areas of finance that you could go into afterwards. At A levels, I did biology, psychology, and economics. So I didn't actually do maths at at A levels, but I don't think that's hindered my progression with my SEMA qualification at all, just because you do get support from the learning materials and the tutors through the learning provider, which is useful to have. So going into a finance apprenticeship, similar to Felix, I knew I wanted to do an apprenticeship because obviously you get paid, you get your tuition paid for, and so it's definitely a very different life to if you went to university. So like I'm able to rent a house, so I'm able to sort of support myself quite nicely. And then so I did look around for lots of different finance apprenticeships, but then I eventually ended up choosing Jaguar Land Rover, as the qualification itself, the SEMA qualification, is very universal. Once you have that chartership, you can pretty much go anywhere, although I would rather like to stay within JLR. And as well as that, you can opt to do a master's degree as well in finance at the end of your 4-year program. So far, I've really enjoyed visiting the plants in person. One thing that is good about working for JLR is versus a bank is you actually work for a tangible object, and you can see exactly how the work you put in results in something physical that you can see. Most challenging, I've probably found the increased responsibility of the second year. You do get in my role, which is running change, you can read about it top right. I do get a lot of messages and calls and emails, and it's just about prioritizing the right ones. But again, an uphand of that challenge is I do feel very valued in the team that I'm in, and I do feel like what I contribute matters.
Fabulous, thank you, Daisy. And I think what all of you in terms of apprentices have touched upon there is that real responsibility that you've all got from coming and doing an apprenticeship at JLR, is that you are given real responsibility, real projects also, and that is tangible in terms of when you first start your apprenticeship. In terms of Felix, in your role, you were talking about the first 6 months or so is where you feel like you are actually achieving. But I think, Daisy, a really good point there that you touched upon is that tangible piece that you can physically see in terms of the work that you're doing. So what I am going to do is I'm going to move on just to cover off some of the final slides that we've got remaining, but then we should have a good amount of time then to cover off in terms of any questions that we've got. But in terms of for anybody that is interested in making an application with us at JLR, the first stage is in terms of it's an online application via our careers website, so at jaguarlandrover.com. All of our careers, all of our applications do have to be made online. You do not need a CV or a cover letter. It is purely just an online application, which is sharing about who you are, what you're studying or so, and that will be fine in terms of if you have got predicted grades that you'll achieve by the time you'll join us. And you'll be asked there a question which will be around 250 words, which you can put, why do you want to work at JLR? And that's really where you can emphasise to us your passion about joining our business and joining an apprenticeship. The next stage there, if you're successful at that stage, is where you then go into online testing. So there's a number of different testing that you'll do. So that might be a verbal, numerical, diagrammatical test, for example, but we do have a practice test area where you can go and explore. And the next slide, I've got an area where you can go and explore what are more of those tests in more detail. And if you're successful at that stage is where you then go to an online assessment centre. So all of our assessment centres are virtual. And at this stage, you would complete an interview and a presentation exercise. And the presentation exercise we will send in advance to you to be able to prepare. And then if you're successful there, the next stage is offer and next steps, which is then an opportunity where we'll bring you into a JLR facility to learn more about your programme and get to meet some of the apprentices and managers in person too. But in terms of where there is a useful space where you can go and look on the website in terms of for more details around each of those steps also, we have just launched our employability hub, which can be accessed on the website, which talks about each of the steps in more details. So what to expect for those. There is a piece around reasonable adjustment. So if you need any reasonable adjustment that you might have at school or college, please do let us know, as that's really important to enable us to support you as part of the process. But what it also has is a range of hints and tips for every single step of the process, as we really want to support you in terms of making an application with us. And it does touch upon our behaviours that we look for, which is our creators code. So just a great one to be aware of. And then just in terms of the remaining roles that we do have open, so we have been open for applications for a couple of months now, so since the start of January. So a number of our roles have started to close. So if you are interested in making an application for a September start for the remaining roles, please do go ahead and make an application as soon as possible, as we are continuing to review the programmes. But we have our level 3 advanced apprenticeship in manufacturing in our electric propulsion manufacturing centre and our Halewood roles open. We have the level 4 higher apprenticeship engineering programme accepting applications, and the level 6 applied professional engineering, our control systems pathway. So you can actively apply for those roles now for a September start, or if you've missed that deadline and you're thinking about a 2025 start, or maybe you're in Year 12, for example, and looking for next year or so, you can also register your interest. So using that QR code on screen, you can scan that and it will take you to a register your interest form, where the team will essentially email you as soon as the roles go live next year, which will either be in around September, October time for the finance apprenticeship that Daisy's on, and then for the programme that Marley and Felix are on, they typically go live around January, February time of next year or so. So I am going to pause there just in terms of to make sure that we do have questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there also, but just an opportunity now, I think, for us to take any questions, Ellie.
Thank you, guys. That was super insightful, and it's lovely to hear all of your individual stories. So yes, we have had quite a few questions come through. So I'm going to start off with one for you, Chantal. Which is, do you offer any opportunities at all in London? That one's come up quite a few times.
So we don't have any apprenticeship opportunities that are based in London, no.
Great, thank you. And then Felix, this was probably a good one for you. Someone has asked if you have any tips on the situational judgment tests for the application process.
I just responded to that one in the chat, actually. I was going to say, because I have a lot to say on this, obviously it's only a few months ago. With all the tests they give you, they do send out an email ahead of time explaining what tests they will give you. I think they give you a week, maybe 2 weeks notice. And how I prepared for it was really helpful. I went on YouTube, literally Google situational judgment test or psychometric test. There's loads of really helpful videos. And also, if you Google the name of the test into just Google, you can find practice tests online that companies have for free, like a free sample test. Just do a few of those little and often. And that really does help you. You get feedback from them as well. And the other thing is, don't stress, because it's really easy to fall into that trap. And just any little bit of practice that you do puts you more ahead than you think, than other people who aren't focused on applying to this apprenticeship, or, you know, spreading themselves too thin. So just do your best. And yeah, with far as situation judgment tests as well, they're common sense sort of questions. They're sort of like scenarios at work where it's like, you have a problem with a colleague, how do you go about resolving it? A lot of them can be answered sort of just taking a step back and thinking what you would do in that situation. I think honesty is key as well. Yeah, but just little and often practice, and you use the internet. There's lots of good resources out there.
Great, thank you, Felix. And Chantal, there's been quite a few questions about the number of apprentices that you hire each year compared to application numbers.
So in terms of for us, each year or so it does vary, but for this year we are taking around 300 or so apprentices, which is a really good number for us, and an increase from last year or so. We do get quite a large volume of applications for our programmes, but I don't think that is one to put anybody off, because it's really important that you put that application in, because we've got 3 of our apprentices here that have achieved a role also, so it's definitely achievable. But my best advice is, when the roles do come out each year, is just put your application in early. So if you're thinking about it for next year or so, register your interest, as that will be really important to get your application in first.
Right, and then one for all of you apprentices, if you want to go one by one. What type of skills or experience or activities did you maybe put in your application that you feel might have helped boosted your application, if any at all?
I don't mind going first. Sorry, Felix.
That's all right.
I would probably say like it's really hard these days because not many places offer work experience. I was lucky in the sense that I got to do work experience when I applied, but I know for a lot of people now that's not the case. I would honestly say if you do like clubs, activities, you play football, you do anything outside of school or in school that you attend regularly, you're a big part of, or you know, you've been part of a head girl, head boy, things like that at school, they're amazing skills that you've already acquired. You know, you've turned up on time, you've taken part, you've showed your commitment, and that's all things that we'd be looking for as part of any team, regardless of what apprenticeship or course you apply for. So those types of things, I would definitely say, no matter where you come from, what your background is, that would be a really great thing to start with.
Can I just add to that as well? Yeah, so when I was applying, I think a really good thing that I do is try and think of little examples. They don't even need to be work experience, just everyday life or at school that you can bring along to the interview and just sort of drop in there now and then. I think a really good example is I had one where it was like, name a time where you, I think it was like, did something, like you perfected something or proud of something or worked on something. And like I had my engineer's square from like GCSE. It was like 3 years old at that point. I just said, oh, I stayed after class and just I filed this down. It wasn't required of me, but I wanted to make it look even more like the ones in the cupboard that, you know, they were ones that we'd made. And just sort of having physical examples to hand where you say, this is something that I did. Not even that, but I used to work at a Chinese takeaway. And we had to write down the phone numbers of everybody who called. And you know, half my job, or most of my job actually, is just Excel and like spreadsheets. And so I said, oh yeah, no, a part of my job was writing down phone numbers, and that gave me the skills to sort of cross-reference numbers and that sort of thing. And it doesn't even need to be like little tiny things. I think what they're looking for, not just nobody's going to have loads of work experience, or if any, but just sort of the ability to sort of show how the skills you have are compatible and can be compounded upon within the job that you will have. Because I'm not an engineer. I think the term, you know, you're a competent engineer when you're qualified. So I'm not at the moment, and I didn't start as that, but I gained the skills to become that. The whole point of an apprenticeship is it makes you qualified. And so just bring any example, like, oh, this is a time when I was working in a shop and the customer asked me, do you have this in this size? And we didn't, but I made it work for them. I called up the next shop, or, you know, little tiny examples, or even if you're helping your siblings, if you can bring those to the interview or sprinkle them into your application and just say, here's an example of when I demonstrated this skill, that really goes a long way.
Thank you, Felix. And Daisy, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say like the interview process isn't about you knowing everything. It's just about conveying across that you're willing to learn what there is on offer. And sort of just some examples I used, I did sort of lifeguarding as my job. So that's obviously like teamwork, problem solving, all of that. And then I do agree with Felix said about making a document about specific examples. So I looked up sort of the JLR company competencies and the customer framework and sort of thought of questions that they might ask in the interview that I could think of an example for, and then sort of had that prepped beforehand.
Great, thank you. And then another one for you, Chantal. When the students have finished their apprenticeship programs, are they guaranteed a job at the end of it? Or is it easy to get a job afterwards, is what somebody has asked.
So I think in terms of for us at JLR, also we've invested in you for that 4-year period of time, and we have an end role that we've invested in you to come into at the end also. I think the main important part is that we always say to everybody is work really hard on your apprenticeship programme, because we have an end role in mind for you to go into. In terms of if you're performing, if you are completing your apprenticeship programme, completing all the courses, etc. that you need, and doing the job role that you need, I think that is kind of the main hints and tips, is just work really hard in terms of your apprenticeship program, because we've got a destined role at the end for you, as long as you are showing your commitment to us as a business and commitment to the courses, etc. that we've invested in you.
Right, and then just a couple more, probably for you again, Chantal. With the degree apprenticeships, is there an option to stay at university accommodation if the distance isn't commutable?
So in terms of for us at JLR also, we don't have accommodation blocks that we have dedicated, but at the moment the team are working in close proximity with locations closer to our Coventry and Gaydon site, also to be able to find more accommodation blocks closer to those facilities. I don't know, Felix, if you want to add to that, maybe you've got somewhere closer by or something.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a fresh experience and everyone's looking for year 2 residences at the moment. Personally, I work at Gaydon nearly all the time. I can work from home as well, but I also go to university at Warwick, so equidistant is Leamington Spa, which is where I am. You're not allowed to go to so I'm University of Warwick. I'm not eligible for the official Warwick student accommodation, but I am in third party with Warwickshire Colleges, which is student accommodation. I would recommend get lots of people I know got house shares. They sort of spoke to people on, you get before you join, you get put in little group chats so you can meet other apprentices and talk to them. So a lot of people met up independently or found houses together. I'd really recommend doing that because you've got the support structure there. You meet new people, that's lovely as well. But having other people who are in your situation, who you can relate to, who can share their experiences with you, who can help you develop, is really important, I think. But yeah, you can find third-party student accommodation, which is what I've done. So I am in a student halls at the minute, but it's not a Warwick one and it's not a JLR one. Yeah.
Marley, did you have anything to add to that, or is that?
No, I was literally just going to say about the group chat. I have been very lucky that I can live at home and commute into Gaydon. However, a lot of my friends, even on the level 3 course, have moved from up and down the country, and they also got added to the same group chats that Felix added. So yeah, no, that was it from me.
Perfect. And then one final question for you all. If you were in the same position as the students now, maybe looking to apply, what is one piece of advice that you would give them?
Ooh, mine would probably just be confident. Like, be yourself. You know, we ask you to come as you are, basically, and that could never be more true. So come as you are, be confident, and just be yourself. If you get to the point where you're offered an interview, or you get even further than that, you get offered the job, you've obviously done something right, and we've seen something in you. So believe in that, and yeah, stay confident.
I'd say 2 things about the apprenticeship, the application, pardon me. First off, just prepare little and often. Don't stress yourself out. Don't stay up all night. That won't help you. But just little bits like, oh, I've got 5 minutes now. I've got 10 minutes now. I'm just going to read through what I've written again. Little things like that. Also, just be passionate. Like, you should apply to something you want to do. And if you want to do like this, I wanted to work with cars and I wanted to work in engineering. And I think that's what shone through my application. It'll be the same for you if you apply to something you want to do, not necessarily just because you think it's the best one. That will shine through. And then when you're successful, because I know you all will be, if you put your minds to it and you get through, I just say, just get to know people. So make contacts, just introduce yourself, say hello, everyone's in the same boat as you, and that'll really put you sort of in a good position to know people and build your network when you get here. Yeah.
And Daisy?
Yeah, I'd say to not focus too much on maybe the qualities that you lack, but just to try and see how you can build upon that and sort of maybe show different experiences that you've done for yourself in order to do that.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Well, unfortunately, we haven't got time for anything else, but thank you for the team at JLR for hosting this tonight, and thank you everyone for attending. And hopefully you'll get to meet the JLR team in person one day. But thank you everyone, and have a lovely evening.